Shalom, making evil praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Shem Yahushai. And double honors to the elders and apostles, the great millstone, who do rule and teach well. Yeah, brother here, Shamash one Ban Yehoda. And, I found this really nifty little article here. I'm going to read, a little bit, just enough to get, a good point. And then, I'm just going to, go into another article explaining a little bit more, and bring out quick scripture, and then leave it like that. And then I'll probably come back and do more of a deep dive tomorrow. I'll probably talk about this article, and I'll line up another about 20 or 30 scriptures, just talking about a topic of my choice, maybe more like 10 to 20. It usually takes me about a minute per scripture to explain it, a minute per verse, or a couple verses to explain all of it. So, the dedollarization efforts continue. BRICS member nations reduce U.S. Treasury holdings to boost local currency value. All right, so these nations, in BRICS, they're focusing on themselves. These nations are getting themselves together. They even got Jake in there, Brazil. The United States dollar has reigned supreme as the world's dominant currency for nearly 8 decades. However, a coalition of emerging economies wary of the Western world's pervasive influence on global governance and finance is determined to diminish its provenance. Several members of the BRICS Economic Alliance, including China, Brazil, and India, have been divesting from U.S. Government-backed assets, primarily U.S. treasuries. So, they're starting to move away their holdings out of the U.S. government, not buying treasuries. Don't ask me on the ins and outs of all that, but I know you have like a treasury department. And it's like kind of like stocks. It's like government stocks, I believe. So China, the largest foreign holder of U.S. treasuries, reduced its holdings by $3.6 billion in just 1 month, bringing its total divestment to $117.4 billion over 12 months. Brazil and India also trimmed the U.S. Treasury holdings, shedding $2.7 billion and $2.3 billion, respectively. These moves seem as an effort to reduce dependence on the U.S. dollar and defend against its strength, particularly by China, which aims to support the yuan. The de-dollarization process involves selling U.S. treasuries to accumulate local currency and boost its value. Right, and you gotta go into Revelation, the 17th chapter about Babylon and the Great Whore Babylon, which is America. Now sits on many waters. Hey, those nations that are under it, a lot of them starting to break away, man. Some of these guys are starting to break away from that. Like these nations here, they're not, they're starting to move away from the American dollar. Another scripture that makes me think of is Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter. Woe unto him that layeth himself with thick clay, and the word for thick clay is ibadiat, which means debt. Woe to him that layeth himself with debt. And that's debt on 2 levels: spiritual debt because of what they did to the children of Israel. Where we are the Lord's special and chosen people. We're also that reminds me, was it Zechariah, the 1st chapter? The Lord was angry with us, but they furthered the affliction. That's what Esau did. He furthered the affliction. I mean, he tortured us, in those plantations, tortured our people. In the plantation, he tortured the northern kingdom when he went down here, fucking lighting them on fire and shit. I don't know if they crucified them, but I think they were lighting them on fire. They were fucking, cutting babies open, cutting pregnant women stomachs open. They were doing all kinds of stuff, and that's in the scriptures too. They were doing stuff like that to our people. The raping, the murdering. That's why you got guys like Hatui was speaking out against it. And I made a video about him. He was like one of the earliest rebels. I think he was I can't remember what he was, a Asherite or something, or I can't remember. Don't quote me on that. Look at my channel. Go to my channel and scroll down. You'll find a video on Hatui, Hatuey, and I kind of do a little bit of a dive into a Wikipedia article. And he had some candid things to say about this damn devil. Esau. Right. The US dollar has served as the world's primary currency since the end of World War II and has evolved in 80% of international trade transactions, right? And then in 1971, I just looked this up. I had to remind myself, you had the Bretton Woods Agreement, and pretty much the US dollar, pretty much was lost its gold status and essentially became completely fiat currency, and then shortly after, to assert its dominance, what did they start doing? They started going across the Middle East, and started cracking skulls, getting these nations in line, so then the US dollar could be used and be like the most used currency for oil and things like that, and that's pretty much what they were over there for. And also black market stuff like the whole poppy fields. I think that's like Afghanistan. They were there for that too, for drugs, to synthesize drugs. Man, this just goes deep, man. The whole thing with Saddam Hussein, the Gulf War, Iraq, Afghanistan, all that stuff. The whole war on terror, so-called, when they're the ones that funded the terrorists and created the terrorists in like the 80s. It's really a deep thing. A lot of those guys were all CIA assets. Saddam Hussein was a CIA asset, but they say he kind of broke away. What's his name? Osama bin Laden, which who knows, they even killed him. They probably did, and they probably stabbed him in the back in the end. But his code name was Tim Osman or something. He was around in the whole 9/11 kind of era, and he was a CIA asset. So this whole thing is it's a whole big screw job. It's a mess. So calls to reduce the dollar's dominance have persisted for some time. That goes to also Esau having that great sword. Right? He goes around the earth with that great sword, his military might, his weapons, and that's how he's been able to assert the U.S. dollar's dominance. No one wants to fuck with America. But now these nations are getting bold with it. They feel like, look at America, look at their soldiers, look at their troops. I believe the U.S. military is at an all-time low in terms of recruitment rates, and they're trying their best to try to get more people to join. But yeah, no one takes our military seriously. Got all these, agendas and this agenda and that agenda, and what I'm talking about, the sexual agenda. Calls to reduce the dollar's dominance persisted for some time. These calls have intensified due to recent geopolitical shifts and mounting tensions between the West and BRICS cornerstones, Russia and China. Right, a lot of fights with them, over Taiwan. With China, Japan also is having tensions with not just North Korea, but also China, because North Korea and China are starting to link up a bit more as Korea starts to increase its kind of ties with Russia and things like that. So events have contributed to this trend, including Western sanctions against Russia following its invasion of Ukraine, which froze a substantial portion of Russia's foreign currency reserves. This go to major banks from the SWIFT messaging network. Additionally, the U.S. imposed restrictions on semiconductor exports to China. All right. So pretty much, they talk about how they're trying to create their own currency, and they want to create their own, central banking union, stuff like that, to have their own currency, which is also going to go to CBDC. They're going to have their own version of the MOTB. All these nations are going to do it because as a national leader, it would be foolish to not do it. That gives you complete, total, autonomous, dictatorial control over your people. When you have that, and you can read the inner data of all your citizens, be able to track them, do all kinds of stuff, make them hear shit, total control. All All right, so this is Investing News Network. How the BRICS currency affects the U.S. dollar, updated 2023. So I'm not going to read all this. So how would a new BRICS currency affect the U.S. dollar? Because that's what they want to do. Pretty much the rest we can also just skip on down. So let's get done. How would a BRICS currency impact the economy? Potential shift towards a new BRICS currency could have significant implications for the North American economy and investors operating within it. Some of the most affected sectors and industries include oil and gas, banking and finance, commodities, international trade, technology, tourism and travel, and the foreign exchange market. A new BRICS currency will also introduce new trading pairs, alter currency correlations, and affect volatility, which I think is how something is easy to change or not, or the market, how easy, like, I guess, values go up or down, requiring investors to adapt their strategies accordingly, right? And now they're saying here, how do investors change it, pretty much move and start to have more correlation with BRICS. See here, consider alternative investments such as real estate or private equity in the BRICS countries. So investors are going to start moving away from here, and yeah, shit is not going to look nice. All right, so this is Malachi 1:1, the burden of the Lord of the world. Word of the Lord to Israel by Malachi, and burden, tribute, burden lifting, oracle, prophecy, same thing, I have loved you, saith the Lord, yet ye say, wherein hast thou loved us? Was not Esau Jacob's brother? Saith the Lord, yet I have loved Jacob. But I have loved you, saith the Lord, yet ye say, where have you loved us? Because we were going through it. In that time, we just came back. In Malachi's time, speaking contemporarily, I guess in history, historical, like around that time. Malachi said he was around like 100 years after we returned back to Israel. So, we weren't really in the best of positions. We pretty much rebuilt the temple, but the temple was never to its same splendor and glory. I believe we already built the walls by this time, if I'm correct. But we weren't really in the best of position, and pretty much Jake was kind of not really doing much, and pretty much just what Malachi came down to do, to renew that fervent zeal and love of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, among the people. Get the people to do what they gotta do. And of course, Yahushai, that's Yahweh Bashem Yahushai. I mean, that's what we know now, but back then it would just be love of the Lord Yahweh, get them to get back on track and stuff like that. Verse 3, right? I mean, Yahushua was in the Old Testament, but they didn't really understand it yet, until he literally came down later on, until Yahushua came on the scene, right? So Malachi 1:3, and I hated Esau, laid his mountains and his heritage waste for the dragons of the wilderness, right? And that's what's gonna happen, to him. He's gonna lose his land, and everything it's gonna be gone. America's gonna be destroyed, and it's gonna be laid waste for the dragons of the wilderness. The dragons, jackals, different animals, That's going to happen to America, like it talks about in Jeremiah, I think 51, I think it's 51, or maybe I'm thinking about Isaiah 13, but they say the same thing, basically. America is going to be destroyed for generations to come. No one's going to resettle there. Pretty much the doleful creatures are going to make their nests there, and things like that, different desert animals, because this place is going to be reduced to a desert, The missiles are going to destroy this place utterly, wipe it all out, and reduce it to a barren desert like wasteland. That'd be interesting to look up. I mean, missiles, I'm pretty sure they can do that. I'm certain, well, it's going to happen, so missiles can do that, but I want to see how the ins and outs of how that works. How do missiles cause desertification? I mean, The way I think of it, because a lake of fire is just so much heat, it would just burn like literally everything, you know. But I got to see that. I'll look it up for myself. So, whereas Edom saith, we are impoverished, but we will return and build at desolate places, to saith the Lord of hosts. They shall build, but I shall throw down, and they shall call them the border of wickedness, and the people against whom the Lord hath indignation forever. Right? We are impoverished, but we return and build at desolate places. Yeah, they did that during the Renaissance period. They got their power back. They started to consolidate their power during that time. The Moors were fighting against each other, and I'm talking about Spain, right? Then they grew in more power, and then you had the thing, the Reconquista, and the Inquisition period, where they started to take the Moors and hunt them down and forcibly convert them or murder them. And shortly after, what do? They came down there looking for more. Esau came down there in time, looking for more, going to West Africa, and he got us and brought us over here to America. But there's all kinds of stuff happening between there. Columbus finding America, and then shortly after, they bringing slaves from West Africa to go serve, in the Americas, or the whole thing with Bartholomew de las Casas, and then in other regions throughout Europe, England, Ireland, Scotland, all these different regions. We started to lose our power there, and then they started engaging in the slave trade, and one thing led to another, and we pretty much lost everything. We got put in chains, and then that will be, was it Deuteronomy 28 and like 64 or something like that. Nation swift as eagle, in that regard, young or old. So, yeah. Throw down the buildings of Esau by way of nuclear fire from the ICBMs of World War III, right? Referred to as the people of the Lord have indignation forever, because they're the only people that will be utterly destroyed from off the face of the planet Earth. And that's true. That's the only nation that's going to happen to. They're going to be destroyed, pertaining to Obadiah 1 and 18. But they'll just reincarnate as other nations, because pretty much they're all all people's spirits and their souls. They're all a part of the Lord, and the Lord isn't gonna just destroy spirits or souls. He's just gonna reincarnate, and among other nations. So that's pretty much it. Lord willing, you edified, and shalom.